Who's working on this in Berkeley?
Hans Bede.
Well, you'll get to the truth.
And if the truth is catastrophic?
Then you stop and you share your findings with the Nazis. So neither side destroys the world.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our season of Christopher Nolan. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is... I'm just imitating the feet stamping. I am John Rocha, writer, producer, and host, and voiceover artist down here in San Diego, California. Ready to put on my lab coat, my goggles, and get back into Oppenheimer with you, brother.
What's crazy that only I was allowed to see is as you were pounding your desk to make that noise, the whole background was shifting back and forth like it does behind Oppenheimer when he does that because your camera was bouncing. So it was pretty cool. Right. But we should say that we couldn't have cameras or microphones or anything else without our supporters on patreon.com/thecine-files, as well as on Apple Podcasts, where they can be listening to ad-free versions of the show. They can ask questions about episodes, which we'll hear some of these coming up, as well as listening to our Cine-Files shorts. And spoiler alert, we just recorded a doozy of a short. It's really a medium, if not a long, discussing how does quality art actually make it to the top. Needless to say, we went a long way on that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, another way you can support our show, if you listen to us with the ads and you hear about a product or service that you want to try out, we'd appreciate you all reaching out to those clients and using our code, because you get a discount and you signify to them that they should keep coming back every week to support us here on the channel. Right now, we've got BetterHelp, Quince, 11 Reader, Thompson Cigars supporting us right now. So please, if you hear anything you want to try out, enjoy yourselves, use the products and service, and then let us know what you thought about it as well. Let us know if you enjoyed it so we can let the clients know as well from our own personal points of views.
So we are on part 2 of Oppenheimer, and I want to give you a little behind the scenes, which is that something happened between part 1 and part 2 that, as far as I can remember, only happened once before on the Cine-Files, which was after Crimson Tide, where John called me up, and as we were talking about business, John said, "How are you feeling about the episode?" And I expressed that I was feeling a little bit conflicted and not sure that we were really delivering on this movie. And John, it seemed like you were feeling kind of the same way.
Yeah, it struck me when we recorded part 1 of our conversation that I was a little bit like, are we getting to the things that we need to get to? Because I've watched the movie now 3 or 4 times in preparation for our conversations and rewatched some scenes over and over again because I think this is becoming my favorite Christopher Nolan film. So my desire for us to get these things right and not be too bogged down in the minutia and get to the big points and the big themes that we have in the movie, I felt that maybe I was concerned that I was stopping the show too much with hitting certain points and hitting parts of scenes because I'm in love with the film so much that I want to make sure we highlight all these great moments that I personally enjoy. But I was worried that I was maybe slowing things down a little bit from us getting to the bigger stuff that this film has to say about nuclear power, about our world, about security, about all the things and the themes that this film explores.
It's one of those moments where we were feeling the same thing. I was going like, I feel like we're getting just what you said, bogged down in the minutia, too much on the details. Are we being worthy of this film that both you and I feel is really important? And the thing that occurred that I figured out is part of what we're struggling against is that there's a ton of exposition and information and different settings and tons of characters and tons of stuff. And Nolan is such a genius at using the intercutting, the back and forth through time, all of the images of the science things and the people that he sees and all of the music and the sound design to make all of that exposition and introduction of incredible detail totally captivating. Yeah. And us trying to explain those things in words has the opposite effect, you know? And so I think as we're moving forward, we're probably going to miss some of those details and some of those intercuts and some of those moments because we want to talk about the big things, because we cannot bring in several episodes of the Cine-Files the vast amount of technique necessary to make it flow the way Nolan does. We can't do that on this show.
But again, this was, something that Steve and I were kind of feeling, and I called him about it because I wanted to make sure we addressed it. And we wanted to be honest with you all about it, who listen to us, because you all are so patient with us. You give us so much grace in how we approach things, but we also want to honor your patronage of our show, whether it's with your ears or downloads or with your contributions. So I was very happy that Steve and I were on the same page. And so we'll see going forward how we handle the second part of Oppenheimer and get to the things we need to get to. We'll see.
So, John, where we left off, Alvarez had run into the lab with a newspaper because Germany had split the uranium nucleus.
How? Bombarded it with neutrons.
It's a nuclear fission. They did it. They split the atom.
It's not possible.
Oppenheimer looks almost like he's in a daze, like just shocked. And he wanders over to the blackboard to try to go through the math again, because again, all of this science is really figured out with mathematics, and only some of it is possible to actually test in the real world. And that's this moment we're having right now.
Yeah, I think this is so important for the movie to see how many times Oppenheimer is behind the eight ball, or a step behind, or shocked or surprised by the advancements that happen that are not under the auspices of his team. Because it puts us in the place as the viewer, because we're liking this guy, we're following this guy. Like, we're in that space now. Wait a minute, who is he behind? How's he behind? How's he going to figure this out? And so it adds a little more of the tension to those of us who don't know this story, which is probably 95% of the people who watch this movie, or 90% of the people who watch this movie, maybe if I'm being liberal about it. But like this thing you look at here, it's great because now you see him, he's flustered. And he's trying to figure this out on the board. And he's the guy we've been handed from the beginning, who is this incredible scientist.
And Oppenheimer has finished his proof, and he shows it to Lawrence.
See? Can't be done.
Very elegant. Quite clear. There's just one problem.
Where?
Next door. Alvarez did it.
Yeah.
And they're looking at like an oscilloscope, and they're looking at kind of the results of this test. And clearly, again, it's like I don't understand everything they're saying, but it's clear that something really, really amazing has taken place.
These fission pulses, they're massive. I've seen 30 of these in the past 10 minutes.
Theory will take you only so far.
And that's what's great, is that I think this has solidified this idea of the practical physicists and the theoretical physicists, and that to accomplish anything, they actually have to work together.
Extra neutrons boil off, which could be used to split other uranium atoms.
Chain reaction. You're thinking what I'm thinking.
You, me, every other physicist around the world who's seen the news.
And I love that they're 100% know exactly what they're talking about. And Alvarez goes,
What? What are we all thinking?
A bomb. Alvarez. A bomb.
What a statement in that moment. Now we know what this is. I mean, obviously we know what the story was going to be, but now we have this idea of the bomb now. They're going to make it. They're going to do it.
This is like a fork in the road, is that we have realized that it's possible that there is some technology that they could make this unbelievably powerful bomb.
Yes.
And what's so crazy is we're essentially just going to rush towards it. And we're going to talk about in this film, there are all sorts of reasons why maybe that is absolutely the right and only possible decision. But there are a lot of only possible decisions in a long chain of decisions that lead us to the Cold War, and to having more, capacity. I don't remember if we can blow up the world 13 times over or 12 times over or 25 times over, but we now have sitting in, 50-year-old silos, enough weaponry to destroy the world on computers that were built back in the 50s and 60s.
Exactly.
That's what we have right now. And this moment of every single scientist in the world has this realization that we can build a bomb. This is the origin,
Yep. And the minds and the thing that takes over is who's now becomes a race.
Yep.
Right. And now it's really scary how available this is now. Yeah.
And again, Christopher Nolan was thinking about AI. And what are the things we hear, as soon as they realize they can do it,
Yeah.
Well, now it's a race, and that is exactly what we're in right now. He's outside with Jean, and she is not pleased.
I told you, Robert, no more fucking flowers.
And she throws the flowers in the trash.
Yeah.
What's the deal with the flowers?
Well, I think to her, and I think this is an important relationship in the movie because in a lot of ways, and I'm going to walk into a minefield myself with this, a lot of ways, Jean is essentially the formula he can't figure out.
Yeah,
Jean is
I
in a
agree.
way the bomb. And in a lot of ways he can't, and I don't mean women overall, I just mean this relationship, this character. And this is where I think is fascinating when I was rewatching the movie again, because this is a challenging relationship. He cannot figure her out. Like with Kitty, it's different, and we'll talk about that scene later on when he finally decides to be with her and has a conversation with Jean about it. But in this moment, listen, I've dated women like this, and I'm sure people listening to us have dated men and women like this who don't know what they want. They want you, but they can't figure out why they don't feel more for you. While you feel more for them, they can't meet you. So the moments where you actually are simpatico, those take on so much more importance, and they frustrate you all the more when you have the fights because you don't understand what you're doing wrong and you don't understand why that person won't feel more for you. And that's what's going on here with Jean. She's clearly a troubled person, a lost person in a lot of ways. And although she feels connections to him, she doesn't 100% get there. So there are these moments of rejection, and they're very public. Like she's doing this while Hoke is in the car with his wife. It's right in front of Chevalier. And so it is an interesting moment, but that shows you that, like, even in his own life, he's handling it at, for lack of a better term, radioactive material,
So I think that's excellent analysis. And the thing that you made me think of that I hadn't thought of before is is that both Kitty and Jean are very complicated, very intelligent, very powerful women. But I think what you put your finger on that I hadn't really seen is that I think on some level, Robert Oppenheimer really understands Kitty. And I think on some level, he will never understand Jean,
Well, right. And that's why it's not a coincidence that these scenes happen before he starts to fully commit to the bomb. And that it's Kitty who pushes him to take charge of the project. And that's where he becomes more solidified about what he's doing. Right now, he's a little more unsure about everything. He's caught behind the 8 ball, just like he is with Jean. So it's mirroring that. And then when Kitty comes into his life is when he's much more confident, much more focused, and he's driven to achieve the things that he wants to achieve, pushed by her. And listen, to be fair, he's just as complicated and unknowable as Jean or Kitty. I want to make that really clear. I'm not saying Jean is somehow in deficit to Robert. It's just that he feels more for her than she does, and he can't figure her out. But he's got his own issues for sure.
So while I admire your analysis, you did not actually answer the question that I had asked.
Sorry.
The question I was asking was, why does Jean hate getting flowers? And why does Robert keep buying her flowers when she says that she hates them?
Because I've been in a relationship like this, and you think you can break through, and he thinks he's being kind. He thinks getting her flowers is showing her he loves her. Like, I'm getting you these flowers, I care about you. But she sees the flowers as a symbol of the feeling she doesn't have for him, which she probably feels guilty about. And so every time she sees the flowers, it's a harsh reminder to her that he wants her to feel more. So it puts pressure on her. So she rejects the flowers because of what they symbolize to her. And I think Robert keeps bringing them because it's an extension of his heart. And he thinks, if I can just keep making her, then maybe she'll come around. She'll feel for me the way I feel for her. Right. And he says this later to Kitty, I feel, but she doesn't feel for me what I feel for her. Right. And I think that's the difference. He's very stubborn in that way. Did I answer it funny. That time? Did I?
Yes, you did. Yes, you addressed the actual flowers. The thing to me is, it's if someone says, "Don't fucking bring me any more flowers," I would stop bringing them flowers. But Robert, to the very end, continues to do it. And I'll tell you the thing that occurs to me is, this is Berkeley. It might be Berkeley in the late 30s, early 40s, but Berkeley was always Berkeley. From everything I've read historically, it has always been a bit of a crazy place. And Jean is a perfect Berkeley woman. And I think the flowers are conventional. Flowers are what a beau brings to his girl before going to the Saturday night dance in the Midwest. And Jean is not conventional. Like, but I continue to wonder, why does Robert keep getting the flowers? That's the one that seems so odd to me.
He doesn't like to be told no, maybe.
I don't understand what you want from
I
me.
don't want anything from you.
Well, you say that and then you call.
Well, don't answer.
I'll always answer.
Again, I have been in this relationship. It is supremely frustrating from Robert's point of view. And I've been on the other side, where I've had women who wanted to have more with me, and I just could not feel that way. You know, I had a girlfriend many years ago who's one of the sweetest people on the planet, and it drove her crazy that I didn't feel for her what I was hoping to feel for her. And so this back and forth, don't call. Please don't, because I can't resist, because I need you and I can't figure it out, but I know I'm hurting you. It's a very interesting place to be in, you know.
I mean, this is really fraught. I mean, it is real tough.
Fine. Just no more flowers.
And then heads back inside.
You're not coming?
And Chevalier, he says from the car,
You have to know when you're beaten, Robert.
It's not that simple, Hook.
It's a deceptive line, isn't it, Steve? You have to know when you're beaten, Robert. Robert doesn't, and he never does, which for good, better or worse is who he is.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And we end up at this party where there's loud shouting, and this party is a communist party. You get the joke there? Okay.
Ain't no party like a communist party.
There's obviously reaction to Robert coming in the room, and then this guy, Ellington, comes up, and we meet him. This is a guy who works at Shell Oil, who is a chemist. And this guy is, in all likelihood, not only a Communist Party member, which I'm certain that he is, but also the conduit to the Soviet Union control of the Communist Party in the United States.
Yeah, listen, McCarthy was a dick, Joseph McCarthy, but there were people trading in secrets with the Soviets to undercut us in our country at that time. So he wasn't 100% wrong. The way he went about it, I think, was horrible, but he wasn't 100% wrong. And so we're seeing the shades of that here in this situation.
Blacklists are a terrible thing. People not losing their jobs because of their beliefs. I don't like it when it is people who have beliefs that I agree with. I don't like it when it's people I have beliefs that I don't agree with. But the Soviet Union really was trying to mess with politics in the United States and did have spies here. And that was all really, and this is the thing, is both of these things can be true.
Yeah.
There is, and I'll say it again, though. I said in the first part, we have socialists that are running for various offices around the United States. We have a Democratic socialist as mayor of New York. Yeah. There's no Soviet communists controlling those people. The situation today is a very different situation from that.
But it doesn't mean that there isn't Russian influence coursing through some of the talking heads we see on YouTube and on some of these news stations, quote unquote news stations. So yeah.
Well, this is, again, it's exactly like the Hoover thing, is that there are, and China is also trying to mess with us, and Iran is trying to mess with us. And all of these things are true, and people can believe what they want to believe,
Absolutely. Yep.
And then after we meet this, spy guy, they are cheering for Oppie to get up and speak, and he's smiling, goes up with a lot of accolades to face this crowd.
And I think this is important to show that Oppenheimer likes the attention. He likes the spotlight. And this is the dangerous aphrodisiac that will lead him to create the bomb and then deal with the consequences afterwards and realize that it was his ego, his vanity, his desire to prove his intelligence, to prove his worth that is going to lead him into this moment to create this bomb. Because we're about to get into in a few minutes, Albert telling him not to do it, Robbie telling him not to do it, but he does it anyway because he thinks it's to stop the Nazis from getting the bomb, which is an element of it. But it's also because he wants to be remembered in history. He wants a legacy, and he thinks this is it. So seeing him get that kind of adulation after Gene has just rejected him before that car ride, before the party, there is this thing of like, he needs this.
That's the thing about this character of Robert Oppenheimer. Do I think Oppenheimer spends a lot of time thinking about what is the right thing to do, what is just, wrestling with these incredibly difficult moral questions? I totally think he does. He also likes to sleep around with married ladies.
Yes.
And he also, as you said, he also really likes the attention. He wants to be the guy in charge. He wants the accolades. He wants all those things. And it's not possible through the course of this 3-hour movie, in my opinion, to separate those things out and figure out, well, what was really motivating him.
Yeah.
We're back at the labs, and again, he's arguing with Lawrence about unions. He says,
Teachers are unionized. Why not professors?
Don't you have somewhere to be?
Lawrence, academics have rights too.
Look, it's not that. I've got a group coming.
and of course, what this group is a group to talk about building the bomb. And Oppenheimer is not invited to this group. In walks Matthew Modine, who plays Vannevar Bush, and I don't have the name of the actor who plays Tolman.
Richard, you tell Ruth I'll be down to Pasadena Thursday.
Well, Ruth is Tolman's wife, who Robert is having an affair with.
Yeah.
So he just said to this dude, hey, tell your wife I'll be back at her house for sex while you're up here doing sciencey stuff.
But we don't know that, do we, Steve?
No,
we?
not
we
yet.
don't know that in the movie, right? Yeah, not yet. Exactly.
Not yet. We do find it out later because, I mean, and this is one of those things that separates great films is that you don't know it the first time you see it. And then the second time you see it, you start to pick up a few more details. And then when you prepare it, let's say for a podcast, you pick up a whole bunch more details. And there's so many little touches on this Ruth Tolman relationship throughout the film. He goes back into his classroom and there are cheers because the big paper on black holes has been published, which maybe could have won Robert Oppenheimer a Nobel Prize.
September 1st, 1939. The world's gonna remember this day.
Oh, Hartnett, our paper, it's in print.
You've been upstaged.
Because the front page of the paper is not the discovery of black holes. It is Hitler invades Poland.
You know, this film is so good at not hitting you over the head with the Jewishness that is driving Oppenheimer to want to defeat the Nazis. It is touched on, it's there, and in certain exchanges, for example, we're going to get to that scene where he's talking about the anti-Semitic situation being the reason why Hitler might lose the race to this bomb. It's presented like in the right ways, in the right amounts, I guess. And I think this is so essential because it's a bigger story. The anti-Semitism is absolutely a part of this thing, and the drive there to push back. And when he says to Lawrence, like, it's not your people that are hurting into trains or to camps. And so there's this sense of that in certain moments. And I think it works so well, Steve, you know, because I think when he's looking at that paper, in my mind, he's a Jewish person who knows what Hitler represents, because we see this all the time. We see this all the time in our world, that people try to warn you about what this person is going to do when they get into power, about what's going to happen when this person gets into power. And there's always those people who are like, well, let's see what happens. We don't know. You're being chicken little about it. And then when things start to happen, the people who were like, well, you know, what are the ones who go, wow, I didn't think they were going to do that. And this is what you're seeing, because there were quite a lot of Jewish people in America who were saying that Hitler was a problem in the early 1930s in our country, and people didn't want to listen, you know. And so we see this moment with the paper, and I think there's a lot of that coursing through Cillian Murphy's reaction as Oppenheimer.
I think they handle it really deftly. I think because they don't put it at the forefront all the time. And then, so when it comes out, I think it comes out really, really strongly. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we do this thing that Nolan has been doing the whole time, which is now we fill in a little information by going back to the gray board, where Oppenheimer talks about how entering the war kind of changed his loyalties.
During the Battle of Britain, I found myself increasingly out of sympathy with the policy of neutrality that communists advocated.
And then the problem is then when Hitler invades Poland, then suddenly Russia becomes an ally. And they ask him if his communist sympathies returned then.
I need to make clear that my changing views on Russia did not mean a sharp break from those who held different views. For a year or two during a previous marriage, my wife, Kitty, had been a Communist Party member.
And of course, Emily Blunt is sitting behind him, and she's just been sitting there. You know, it's like we're well into the movie, but you know, and this is one of the things. She had to just sit in the background for a long time. That was her job, you know?
I love it because there's wait, when did she get here?
Yeah.
This is where I keep the good stuff.
Well, I thought this was the Tolman's house.
I live with them while I'm at Caltech.
Yes, with his other mistress when Tolman's out of town.
So, you're a biologist.
Well, somehow I have graduated to housewife. Can you explain quantum mechanics to me? Seems baffling.
Yes, it is.
And then we get another very flirty science-y talk.
Well, this glass, this drink, this countertop, our bodies, all of it. It's mostly empty space.
And as he hands her the drink, we know. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You know the way you know about a good melon.
Groupings of tiny energy waves bound together.
By what?
Forces of attraction strong enough to convince us that matter is solid. Stop my body passing through yours.
Forces of attraction, John.
Yeah.
Before we had some wiggle room, and now we have forces of attraction. This guy's got game. I mean, does he play this move on all the grad students and everyone else and all the other wives in the faculty?
Maybe, but it only works on the ones who wanted it to work on them, which Kitty does from the beginning, it seems like.
You're married to Dr. Harrison.
Not very.
I mean, when has anyone ever answered "you're married" with "not very"?
Yeah.
There is someone that I feel.
Does she feel the same way?
Sometimes. Not enough.
They understand each other so perfectly in this scene.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to New Mexico, to my ranch with friends. You should come. I met with your husband.
Yes, you did. Because you know it won't make a bit of difference.
And you're in. You're in on this relationship.
Even if it's, a bit illicit.
Sordid?
Yeah, sordid. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
No, it totally is. Well, we had, it's not like the relationship with Jean was all,
right, stable.
Or wholesome.
Yeah,
it was,
right.
it had darkness to it. And now this does too. And we cut to the two of them, gorgeous shot of them riding together in New Mexico. And he asks her about her current husband. And here's the thing is that Robert's going to be her fourth husband.
Yeah.
Why did you marry him?
I was lost and he was kind.
What we find out essentially that she had like some brief marriage that was annulled with a music student or something. And then her second husband is this guy, Joe Dallett.
He was from money like me, but he was a union organizer in Youngstown, Ohio. Fell hard.
How hard?
Hard enough to spend the next 4 years living off beans and pancakes, handing out the Daily Worker at factory gates.
But this lifestyle of helping out the workers, she couldn't handle this anymore.
Quit the party. A year later, I wanted him back. Him, not the Daily Worker. And he said, swell, I'll meet you on my way to Spain.
Spain, for those people who don't know, I mean, this is a war where a fascist dictatorship under Franco had taken over Spain. And this was the big liberal cause to help out the rebels against Franco.
I miss our world of ideology, man. I do. We don't do that anymore. There's something about, I'm not saying it was a better world, but I find it fascinating, that because you look at, because the same thing, Hemingway was in Spain during this time as well, right? I mean, was it Farewell to Arms, I think, is based on some of that, or some of his writings were based on that. No, actually, Farewell to Arms is World War I, but the Spain, which it was one of his films.
It's For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Right. Yeah. So, having watched the recent documentary on PBS, like, it's fascinating how this war was a really massive thing for liberals and intellectuals and people who wanted to fight for causes. And so hearing Kitty bring it up here is an interesting thing now in retrospect, having watched that documentary.
Joe got himself killed first time he popped his head out of the trench. Ideology got Joe killed for nothing.
Spanish Republic isn't nothing.
And she has a very different way of looking at it. His, he has he went and he died fighting for a worthy cause. That's awesome. I mean, that's what we need to do.
My husband offered both our futures to stop one fascist bullet from embedding itself in a mud bank. That's the definition of nothing.
Kitty has some fierceness.
It's brutal, right? And Robert does say it seems a little reductive. And I think Robert's right. But Kitty is angry. I think Joe was her greatest love. Sometimes when you're a person who is lucky enough to have multiple relationships in life and love in life, there's always that one, right? And I think this was that one for her. And if he hadn't died, I imagine they would have stayed married. Because remember, she took a break. She ran away from him for a year, but she couldn't resist coming back to him. She wanted to be with him. And I think she hates him for having gone to fight this war. And I think it's broken her. It's made her more cynical, and it's made her more pragmatic, as she says, and matter of fact about it. Because this Kitty we see now is hardened by the loss of Joe. And I think that's what you see here. Like she said, she was lost and he was kind about the guy she's married to now. She was lost because she was devastated from the loss of Joe. And the way she speaks about his death, which is he sacrificed both our futures for this cause, so there's a brutality to how she looks at it, not a nobility.
I actually think, how am I going to say this? That her perspective, because I like the idea of being an idealist and fighting for the worthy cause.
Sure.
But there are a lot of times where there are people who have spent years of their lives and millions of dollars and all sorts of effort, and they're not getting anywhere. And there's a lot of things people do that they're doing because the cause they feel is worthy.
Yes.
But I don't think is doing any good, that's sort of my level. It's not the pragmatic level of Kitty, but a little more of like, well, what purpose is this going to serve? Is this going to help? Is this going to make things better? And sometimes it's not,
Yeah, but is it the results or the process? And I think it goes person to person, because that person may say, well, I did what I wanted to do with my money and with my time, and I did feel it was worth it, whether you feel it was worth it or not, and so I think it all depends person to person, what the end result is. But I hear you, bro, because there's a way to look at it going like, why did you spend all this time and all this money if you didn't change anything?
But they kiss again in spectacular New Mexico shots. And now he is with Jean, who is visibly upset. He's holding her hand.
I didn't want you to hear it from anyone else.
At least you didn't bring me flowers.
And he, of course, answered flowers. and it's so funny because she was the one pushing him away.
Of course.
And now he has gone away.
We both know I'm not where you want, Jean.
Yeah, but it's a door closing.
No. Not as far as I'm concerned, no.
So, to be clear, again, we entered late into the scene, but we assume what he just told her is, I'm marrying this other woman who is pregnant with my child, right?
Yep.
And now she said as the door is closing, and he said, not as far as I'm concerned, which means he is saying at the moment that he told her that he's getting married, I assume you agree, he is saying, but we can still sleep with each other when we want.
Well, I didn't see it that way, but clearly they do. I see it more like he's always going to be there for her, no matter what. And I think that's how I see it, but maybe I'm being too idealistic, Steve. So, because you're right, because they do end up sleeping together. And if you study or read the book, he kept seeing her, even though he was married to Kitty. So, right, you might be 100% right on reading it that way, for sure.
Well, and I think he's still sleeping with Ruth too, probably.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right.
He knocked her up. Fast work.
Can't keep a good man down.
I meant her.
Oh, that's a line right there.
Bro, women know women. And and Jean is coming from a hurt place because she didn't get to end the relationship. He is ending the relationship, which I think affects her too. But she has a very brutal assessment of Kitty. But Kitty stands by him. So I don't think Jean was 100% right here.
And by the way, my headcanon, I think Jean ended this relationship 25 times. and then called him again the next day.
Oh yeah.
And then there's something so cold about this because she asks about the husband, and Robert says,
we talked. They're getting a divorce, so we can get married before she starts showing.
How civilized.
This must happen amongst the intellectual elite, right? I mean, and the wealthy. I don't think they all adhere to the morals and principles that we do down here on the ground. There is this sense of passing, not passing, but swinging, I guess I would say the word is. There seems to be a lot of that. When you read about these people who are at this level, there is a lot of philandering that goes on, both male and female. So it's interesting.
I have zero statistics, but there's philandering on every level. I mean, there are all sorts of people having affairs and kids with other kids' parents and
but I guess in my mind, of course, people with lower intellect would engage in that because there's not that sense of morality or responsibility. But I always seem to expect more from people with higher intellect and higher achievement to adhere to the morality of the world a little bit better. But you're right, Steve. They don't. The statistics are across the board, regardless of wealth or intelligence.
Intelligence is not a guarantee of morality. You know,
Right.
I mean, this is, I mean, the Nazis were trying to build a bomb too, and they had smart scientists working on it. Like, there's intelligence is like nuclear power. It's like the atom. It is the power to do stuff.
Yes.
What we choose to do with us takes wisdom. I think I've said many times that I think the way D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, breaks down traits and separates intelligence and wisdom is one of the smartest things in the world. There are all sorts of intelligent people who aren't wise, and there are people that maybe aren't the smartest in the room that are wise. My favorite wise, not necessarily smart character is Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
You know, he's not smart,
No.
but he's got wisdom to him.
You idiot. This is your community. You think the rules don't apply to the golden boy?
Brilliance makes up for a lot.
That line is one of the lines I like on Oppenheimer at least, you know?
Yeah.
Don't alienate the only people in the world that understand what you do.
So, Steve, I want to ask you a question about this scene. You know, we've been doing the season of Nolan. We've been talking about his male characters. And I have this philosophy or thought that, or belief that when directors take on biopics, it's because they identify with the person or admire the person that they are profiling, right? Spike Lee, Malcolm X, what have you. But if they write the biopic, I always think they're putting some of themselves in the dialogue that goes on. And so we've talked about Nolan and his male protagonists having issues with family, issues with kids, issues with putting work in front of family, things of that nature. So it occurred to me as I've been rewatching these scenes for our conversations in this movie for our conversations, like, is he Oppenheimer? Is this scene? Has he cheated on his wife? Is this the community that she's talking? Is Jean a mistress of Christopher Nolan's, possibly in the past? And is this Nolan taking himself down in this movie by having Jean say to the Nolan stand-in that is Oppenheimer, don't alienate the people in the community who are the few people in the world who understand you? Right? I just wonder if there are elements of this that Nolan is like giving us a window into in a very secretive way. And I might be looking way too deep into it, but it's a fascinating exchange that does not need to be in the movie other than maybe to indicate that Oppenheimer could be in danger of alienating the scientific community, which he does later on down the road.
I mean, to me, that's you know, the primary reason it's in the movie is to plant Teller and to plant Lawrence and to, you know, all these people that he is going to alienate. I think it's totally there for that. I mean, you know, if this were a Woody Allen movie, then the answer would be obviously yes, because that's what Woody Allen does. And I don't mean it like to make accusations about Woody Allen, but he is exploring his own sexuality and his own desires and his own flaws. And that's what Woody Allen is doing. Right. I think for me, like my way of answering your question is that, you know, when I write a script, all the voices are mine, you know, including the bad guys, you know, that's because that's what it is. And so, you know, it's just like what you do as an actor is that you're using some sort of, you know, acting realistically under imaginary circumstances. That's what you do as a writer. And things of yourself come out, but sometimes it's more analogous than direct. In other words, you know what I mean? Like this being about an affair and sleeping around, that would be a direct thing if Nolan had that in his life. But the idea that you're alienating your peers, that you're the wonderkind who people might be getting jealous of or might, I don't think, so it's like, that is true of Christopher Nolan. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so sometimes the way you figure out how to write from a character is you make things analogous to your life and then you write it from the perspective that's their stuff, not your stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying no. And for those of you who may be reacting very strongly right now, I encourage you, stop lionizing people. We don't know what the stuff is behind the scenes, but it could be true. It could not be true. It's just a little bit of analysis I'm doing as I watch this movie. And because as someone who's watched biopics a million fucking times, like I think there's Oliver Stone and Jim Morrison. I think there's stuff that they put themselves in these characters when they write the movies from their own egotistical point of view. So, yeah.
Well, Orson Welles and Citizen Kane
100%
is I mean, and that's not directly a biopic of William Randolph Hearst, but this is what art is. You know what I mean? Like that's, you put yourself into the work that you're doing. I'm not saying that Cillian Murphy is like Robert Oppenheimer, but I am certain that he looked for the parts of himself to help him understand this character, because that's what you do. Back at the labs, and there is a meeting, and Lawrence comes in pissed.
What do you get paid a month?
That's not the point, Lawrence.
What do any of you have in common with farm laborers and dock workers?
By the way, at this time, one of Robert's aides, like a teaching assistant, was eating cat food. That's how broke he was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this idea, like the way it's presented in the film, is these are just a bunch of wimpy-assed, elitist, wealthy grad students who are pretending that their problems are as bad as farm workers, which they're not. Like their problems are not as bad as some of the really serious labor things going on in the 30s, but there are problems.
Because I think Lawrence is doing a disservice to the whole situation, because Lawrence thinks he's coming from a place of like, I'm going to shame you guys into understanding you're pampered intellectual elite. Well, I mean, by the same token, Lawrence is also selfishly concerned that he won't get Oppenheimer on this project. And I think he knows he needs Oppenheimer on this project, which he's about to tear him apart about.
There are power imbalances everywhere. And because the power imbalance with the farm worker isn't the same as the power imbalance with a grad student or a chemist that doesn't mean there aren't issues there. And I'll bring up just one. This has changed recently. It used to be that everywhere in Hollywood and in all sorts of sciencey places and newsrooms and everywhere else, they had unpaid internships.
Yes.
And so people could come in and they would do one of these entry-level jobs, and no one ever questioned it until somebody, and it was like, well, the people are working for free, but they want to. They're excited for the opportunity. Well, the only people that can afford to work for free in an unpaid internship is someone who can afford to work for free in an unpaid internship, which means you're automatically eliminating a whole bunch of people who maybe don't have very much money to have those jobs, which makes the people that end up in the paid positions who started as unpaid internships frequently look a lot alike. And so this idea of you need to unionize so everybody can get paid a union wage solves that problem. That's why there's that's why Lawrence is not entirely right about what's going on here. And then, I mean, Lawrence, he's Josh Hartnett. When he wants to be scary, he can genuinely be scary.
Everybody out. No!
And I love that Robert starts to leave. And he goes, not you.
What are you doing?
It's a trade union.
Filled with communists.
So I haven't joined the party.
They won't let me bring you onto the project because of this shit. They won't even let me tell you what the project is.
Oh, I know what the project is.
Oh.
And finally, we're having the conversation.
Yeah.
We've all heard about Einstein and Ziller's letter to Roosevelt warning him the Germans could make a bomb, and I know what it means for the Nazis to have a bomb.
But I don't.
And this is the moment you mentioned before.
It's not your people they're herding into camps. It's mine.
That's the thing that is important to understand. When it's your community being affected, it has much more weight and resonance. When I see what's happening out in our streets right now, it devastates me from a personal place as the son of immigrants who came to this country. When I see the rhetoric trying to destroy the contributions of immigrants to this country, it decimates me. And so when people are casual about what's going on, I always come back to it. It's not your people they're snatching off the streets. It's not your children they're killing people in front of, their fathers or mothers in front of. And I think that's an important element. And I think sometimes people forget because they're caught up in the philosophy and the objectivity and the conversation. It's like there's a real personal toll going on. And if it's not happening to your community, how much of yourself are you really invested in this cause? And that's what I think is so important in this exchange between him and Pressman. Because Lawrence is thinking about the project, and he's Oppenheimer's coming from it from a Jewish point of view because of what's happening with Hitler in these camps.
There's a logical fallacy where I basically set up the worst situation in the world, and say, you know, well, John, would you take up arms if aliens had killed 90% of the people on Earth and you were one of the last few with a weapon to fight back? Would you take up arms? And it's like, well, yeah, under those circumstances, but the circumstances are so extreme. And then I use that to go like, see, and that's why we have to have the Second Amendment and all of us have to have guns. And it's like, well, we just went from a really big thing to a more reasonable thing.
Yeah.
The Nazis getting the bomb this is the aliens. It is a really big thing. That if the Nazis had developed the bomb, let's say by 1944, well, I might not be here. I mean, the odds are I wouldn't be here. Because Nazis armed with atomic weapons would have won the war. And then not only will all the Jews be gone, gay people, you know, it's the Nazis. This is that. What's interesting about this film, and something that I think Christopher Nolan discusses, but he doesn't shine a big light on it, is we didn't drop the bomb on the Nazis. We dropped it on the Japanese. They were not building an atomic bomb. So at this moment, for Oppenheimer, this is all hands on deck. It is a moral certitude for him, I think, that if the Nazis are trying to develop the bomb, we must develop it first.
Yeah.
That's going to shift later on in the movie.
You think that I tell them about your politics. The next time you're coming home from a meeting, why don't you take a look in the rearview mirror, listen to the sounds on your phone line, and stop being so goddamn naive.
And what's so crazy is Oppenheimer, who I think has seen himself being followed, it's only in this moment that he starts to actually get it.
Do I really care what I do?
Because you're not just self-important, you're actually important.
You dumb, egotistical fuck. You're legitimately important. Stop. Yeah.
And this is something we'll see from Oppenheimer, and this is one of the signs, I believe, of a great leader, is he takes that in, and then he accepts it and completely changes the direction that he is going to go.
Okay. I get it.
If you could just be a little more
pragmatic. I'll talk to Lomanitz, I'll talk to the others. You don't have to worry, it's done.
I don't think it's a coincidence that Kitty ended that previous scene saying that she's pragmatic. That Oppenheimer uses that word here.
Yeah.
And they shake hands, and Lawrence says, then welcome to the war. So these issues with Lawrence were real. They did have some political disagreement, but Lawrence was trying to get him on this committee. It's like a year where he's half in and half out. And can we deal with Oppenheimer or not?
A year. Wow.
Yep. Oof. And then we're going to do what I'll call the 1-2 bop, which is we introduce an idea in the gray board about whether or not he can get a security clearance. And then we continue that in the committee with Robert Downey Jr., where they ask about accusations against Oppenheimer during the war.
Senator, I can't possibly answer for security clearance granted years before I ever met the man.
Fine. What about after?
After the war, Dr. Oppenheimer was the most respected scientific voice in the world. That's why I asked him to run the institute. That's why he advised the Atomic Energy Commission. Simple as that.
It's so interesting that Oppenheimer's security clearance is a critical issue during the war. It is a critical issue later on when he gets brought before the gray board to have it revoked. And then it's a critical issue again for Strauss's own confirmation hearings.
Yeah.
The way that Nolan plays this out is only a person, I think, who did Memento and Inception and Tenet can play at this level of establishing little points of exposition and conflicts, each one paralleling the other in a different part of the timeline. You know, we talked about this with Inception, where I had that instinct of, oh, should I cut this up into separate stories like we did with Love Actually? This is why that's not possible. Because in fact, all of these stories existing at different timelines are the same story. It is the balance between Robert's political leanings and his work for the government, and is he trustworthy? And it plays out on different levels in different aspects and different timelines, all at the same time filmically.
And I think it's going to be important when we get to a scene later when the fellow traveler says to him, they need us now until they don't. And so this idea of the security clearance, they're so willing to be lenient when they need you and so much more strict when they're trying to get rid of you.
I debated when to ask this question, but I think I might just ask it now.
Okay.
Is there any possibility in your mind that Robert Oppenheimer was a spy for the Soviets?
No.
Me neither.
And I don't think it's presented in the film that he is. And I think if he was, that would be a phenomenally stupid thing to do because of what that would lead to in the end and what a betrayal to the country this would be, the country that gave him the opportunity to find his voice and create his legacy. And I think taking the chance to be a traitor would be a step too far, and the result of that would be death, treason. And would he want to be killed in this way? I just don't think that would be something he would do,
I mean,
but I don't know. Have people said he is? Have people given papers on this? I don't know.
Well, this is what this whole movie is about, really, is Robert Oppenheimer, can he be trusted by the United States? It is debated throughout. But the thing to me, what I think about it is
okay,
does Admiral Strauss think that Robert Oppenheimer is actually a communist spy? I don't think so. Does Robbie Robb, the prosecutor, think that he's actually a communist spy? Probably not. Does Teller think that he's a communist spy? Does Lawrence think he's a communist spy? Do any of these people? I don't think anybody really in this movie actually believes that Robert Oppenheimer was working for the Soviets, but they use that to destroy him.
Well, and that's why I think the movie doesn't ever let me think, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I know for me, I never think he is a spy because the people who are accusing him of it are such have ulterior motives, have agendas, and are not pure in their pursuit. And so if they were purer in their pursuit, then I might give more credibility to the fact that he might be a spy. Kind of like JFK. Well, if you present the conspiracy theory with people who the film is presenting have knowledge and have an idealistic motive to find the truth, then you give that a little more weight as a viewer when you're watching it. But if you present these people like Strauss and Robbie Robb, who are clearly have an agenda that they're going after, then, it doesn't carry weight in my mind.
Two things. One, it's interesting that you mentioned JFK because I actually have a note about JFK that's coming in the next scene. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
What I also think is that this is an entire movie exploring, for me, or one of the things it's exploring, what is motivating Robert Oppenheimer? What's in there? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a very complicated question. And the one thing that to me isn't in there is he spying for the Soviets? The thing that's actually being investigated and discussed throughout this whole movie. That's not one of the motivations that I'm wrestling with for Oppenheimer.
I was chair of the AEC, but it wasn't me that brought the charges against Robert.
Who did?
Some former staff member of the Joint Congressional Committee was a rabid anti-communist named Borton. He wrote to the FBI demanding they take action.
The FBI? Why not go to the AEC direct?
Why get caught holding the knife yourself?
Yeah, it's fascinating that he would let down his guard like this. I mean, this guy who's a seasoned politician. You don't think an aide could betray you or, out you in some way, shape, or form. And he's dealt with people at higher ends, like at that commission and the committee and the scientists who he feels betrayed by. Why would you surrender this kind of information to an aide in this way that leads the aide back to you? Or maybe the aide already knew, as we see by the end of the movie. So it's an interesting thing.
What I think it is I think he's monologuing. I think there's some part of himself that can't help bragging a little bit in what he thinks is a subtle way to how smart he was.
That's true. I still think Strauss and Oppenheimer are not that different. They're not. They both want the attention. They both want the stroke. They both want to feel accepted by that scientific community. And they both want to feel like they are the number one guy. And so I think there's elements of both. They're not as different as the movie seems to make you want to think they are.
But how would Borden have access to Oppenheimer's security file?
Because somebody gave it to him.
And this is what made me realize that I think that Christopher Nolan studied the movie JFK. Because what JFK does throughout, it's continually cutting to what everyone is talking about. So if you're talking about David Ferry doing this, we see Joe Pesci doing that thing. If we talk about, Lee Harvey Oswald loading his rifle, we see him loading his rifle. Well, that's exactly what Nolan is doing throughout this entire movie. So at this moment where we talk about the file and how did Borden get it, we see Borden with the file. When we talk about Quarks, we see them. When we talk about meeting Heisenberg, we see that happen. He's doing that exact Oliver Stone technique. And what's weird to me is that Oliver Stone was one of the people attached to this movie at the very beginning before Nolan came on.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Which I don't think that has anything to do with it because Nolan wrote this script, but he is totally doing this technique that really JFK introduces to me to the world, this way of doing things.
Somebody wanted Robert silenced.
Who?
Who knows?
Which is like, he's sitting in the room.
Robert didn't take care not to upset the power brokers in Washington. His opinions on the atom became definitive, and he wasn't always patient with us mere mortals.
And that smile that Robert Downey Jr. has on his face as he describes himself as a mere mortal, he manages to have so much venom and nastiness going on inside, I think.
I came in for plenty of harsh treatment. There was an AEC vote on the export of isotopes to Norway, and they drafted in Robert to make me look like a fool.
Two parts of that sentence. Part one, they drafted Robert Oppenheimer to be a witness for this, isotope thing.
Yeah.
Fact. To make me look like a fool is an opinion. It's the slant he puts on the thing.
Right.
I do not think Robert was drafted to make Admiral Strauss look like a fool.
Mm-hmm.
But he did.
To Robert Strauss.
Oh, right? No, I think to other people, too.
To other people? Okay. All right.
Yeah, because Strauss had just, and this is what's in the book, Strauss had just testified why we shouldn't give these isotopes to Norway and that it's a threat. And then Robert comes up and really makes a joke of what Strauss just said.
There's disdain for Strauss from Robert, for sure. By the way, quick shout out to my brother, Michael Andrew Baker. He plays Oppenheimer's lawyer. So you see him in black and white in this sequence. And then later there's a scene. Michael has been a friend of Shannon's and I's for a long time. And so it's always nice. He's in the Michael movie as well as one of the record executives, having a few scenes. So he's been popping up in all these places now as his career is kind of taking off a little bit. So it's great to see him here.
They ask him about whether or not these isotopes could be useful in the production of atomic weapons. And he says,
Congressman, you could use a shovel in making atomic weapons. In fact, you do. You could use a bottle of beer in making atomic weapons. In fact, you do. I'd say isotopes are less useful than electronic components, but more useful than a sandwich.
Everyone laughs. So first of all, this is exactly word for word what Robert Oppenheimer said at this committee. This is totally correct. It is, from what I can tell, from my limited understanding of these things, it is relatively accurate, but also pretty slippery rhetorically. Is that, yes, it is true you do not use these isotopes to directly build a nuclear weapon, but they can be used in research that might help you to understand things about nuclear weapons that you couldn't understand before. So it is pretty much true, but it is also being pretty fast and loose and manipulative.
Genius is no guarantee of wisdom. Look at this man who saw so much be so blind.
So we've had Lawrence explain things to him and how he looks to the world that he didn't understand. We had Gene talk about, like, you just playing the genius and think you're not going to get caught in all these things. And we have Kitty talking about being pragmatic. There's a lot of influences on Oppenheimer that around this area. So Oppenheimer walks back to his house and immediately we feel that something is wrong. We hear a baby crying, and rather than seeing Kitty trying to soothe the baby, we see her sitting in the dark with a bottle of booze.
I don't know if you've ever had this moment with anyone you've ever dated, Steve, or been with, but it's a really weird moment, and you're really concerned for the person you're with.
I have definitely not had this moment in terms of them sitting in the dark, but we had a child. I mean, I still have a child who cried a lot.
My child.
Who cried a lot. And man, when it's, 4 a.m. and you haven't slept, I totally understand that. I mean, honestly, like, this is one of those things I think Nolan handles it perfectly, where it's like, is this postpartum depression? Like, there things that hadn't been diagnosed yet is what's going on. And also with, Kitty.
Shouldn't you go to him?
I have been going to him all fucking day.
I mean, man, it is a lot.
She's basically saying, I've been doing all the work while you're out there pursuing what you want to do, right? So she's a very complicated character. Both her and Gene are very complicated characters in their approach to things, this relationship.
What I think Nolan does so well is like, this is Oppenheimer's story. That's what we're here for. We're here for building the bomb and all that stuff. But he gives us just enough. And Emily Blunt is astounding in this role to create a fully formed person. And you can feel, like she mentioned it a little bit in the scene in New Mexico, that she's a scientist. She trained to be a scientist.
Yeah.
And over again, her life has been put on hold to support husbands, now to support a child. And of course, her life is going to be essentially permanently in the shadow of her husband.
Yeah.
We cut to Oppie driving the babies in the backseat of the convertible. It's always so funny. Like, and when my kid sees things where it's like, you guys really did that? It's like, yeah. There are no car seats, or I mean, there probably was no seatbelts in this car. Goes to Chevalier's house.
I'm ashamed to ask.
Anything.
Take Peter.
I think we're reeling, going, wait, what? He's giving him the baby? Like, it's kind of an astounding moment.
I think this is why this film is so amazing. Because this protagonist of this movie, Steve, does a lot of stuff that we would normally find questionable in most people. And we are finding questionable, but we also know going into this movie that this guy is an incredible genius in what he does. So and I love that the film is not pulling punches, as opposed to something like Michael, the Michael Jackson movie, which constantly may put him in the best light. This is actually challenging the viewer to see the conflicting points of views and the at times you could argue morally questionable things that he does in order to achieve the things that he wants to achieve. It's a really gutsy portrayal of this man, you know.
A couple things about it. One is that today, where we think of male and female roles, many people think of male and female roles are a little bit more even, and that, you know, the husband, you know, might take care of the baby or change diapers or do stuff like that. That's very possible. At this era, if the mom isn't going to take care of the kid, the dad's not going to take care of the kid. Oppenheimer's certainly not going to stop and take care of the kid. And the other thing is, you know, later on, there's going to be something called the Chevalier incident, where Chevalier is a suspected communist. And what does that mean? And Oppenheimer is going to wrestle with his loyalty to this dude.
Yeah,
I think this scene is critical to that. He showed up with a baby and said, please take care of my child. And without hesitation, Chevalier says, sure. That is a true friend.
And even makes him try to make him feel better about it by saying you're not a selfish, terrible person, because selfish and terrible people don't admit that they're being selfish and terrible, or don't know that they're being selfish and terrible. And I think there's something else. I mean, there's something even more to show that he is a friend to Oppenheimer, which makes the scene later on, when it seems like he's trying to get information from him, all the more unsettling and tragic.
Two other things. One is, you brought up several times, like, is there a connection between Nolan and his relationship to his work versus his family to Oppenheimer? Well, Christopher Nolan was on The Daily Show last night. And it's a great interview, by the way. And Jon Stewart clearly loved The Odyssey. It was very clear in the way the interview went. But one of the things came up is that Nolan said, when I start on a movie, everything else disappears. My family, everything else. So there you go.
That's what I mean. Yes. Okay. Anyway.
You are right, sir.
I mean, The Odyssey is essentially another version of that. When people see it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway.
And I will also say, by the way, look, Oppenheimer was not a family man. Later on, when he was at Los Alamos, he essentially, they sent his kids to live with another family for a long time, like over a year. Wow. And that when he came back, he didn't even know how to talk to his children. He had been so far away from them and living in this different world. And then after the war, when he was so famous, photographers would come up and they would have set up little photo ops with the kids to look like the happy family. But I don't think Oppie was much of a dad.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to ask you about is this thing that Hoke says that you mentioned to comfort them. Selfish, awful people don't know they're selfish and awful. Yeah. Do you think that's true?
Yes. Because I think if you have any remote understanding of what you're doing as being wrong or selfish or awful, that means you do have an understanding of good and evil, which means you understand that you are being selfish and awful. And I think people who don't have that don't care that they're being selfish or awful because they don't see it that way. Right. So that's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
So I think realizing that you are being selfish and awful is a necessity in order to stop being selfish and awful.
True.
But I actually think there are plenty of people who spend a lot of time going, oh, I'm being selfish and awful, and keep on doing it. You know, like just the knowledge alone does not mean you're not being selfish and awful. You know, that's how I would split that particular atom, I suppose.
That's fair.
He's in New Mexico with Kitty and talking about how the world is changing.
We're putting together a group to study
We
feasibility.
shouldn't be doing anything. You should. Lawrence won't get this done. Or Tolman or Robbie. You will.
Again, this is what's great about the film and also challenging about the film. We just saw them surrender their child. A child? But like seeing Kitty go, you are the only one that can do this. You have to. We could think that Kitty is a bad mom. We could think that Kitty is a selfish person. But here she is driving Oppenheimer and is the driving force. This is something Jean could have never done, the way she's presented in the movie. But Kitty is pushing him to achieve this success, you know? And it doesn't seem like it's coming from a place of, you need to do this for us so that we can be comfortable. It's coming from a place of, I love you. I know what you can achieve, but you don't have that extra oomph. And I'm going to push you into that oomph because you need to embrace this.
And Kitty is a very complicated person.
Right.
But in many ways, she is a phenomenal wife for Robert Oppenheimer.
I think she's Emma Thomas. I think she's Christopher Nolan's wife. That's why she produces the movies. I'm sure there are conversations where Chris was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know. I'm a Brit. And I mean, I don't. And she's like, no, you are destined to do this. You are going to do this. You're going to create great art in the world that people need to see. And so I have to believe that Emma is in a way a stand-in for Kitty because she's his executive producer of his movies.
Right.
She's driving him to do these things, you know, which is good because he needs it.
Let's go meet General Groves. we first see him in like a buffet where Lawrence is there, and then we're at Oppenheimer's desk. Groves enters, and this, of course, is Matt Damon. Here's how Matt Damon got this gig. I read that. I mean, this is the story that I have read. Is that apparently he was on a break from acting when this gig came up. He had, and this is what I read, had in couples counseling with his wife, decided that what would be best for their marriage is that he took a break and focused. So it totally relates to the thing we were just talking about before. That he just needs to be part of his family, part of the marriage. He put one, clause in this agreement that it was essentially like, couples have their list, and this is, oh, you're on my list. His list was, I will stop acting for a while unless Christopher Nolan asks me to do a movie, in which case I'm going to go do the movie. And that's exactly what happened.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Talk about manifesting something.
And then a few years later, he's off doing the Odyssey, which was, if this was a tough shoot, man, that was a really tough shoot.
Colonel Groves, this is Lieutenant Colonel Nichols. Have that dry clean.
And hands him his jacket.
Yeah.
So we have talked about history many times on this podcast and whether or not you are accurate to history. And some movies that we love are not at all accurate, like Braveheart. And some movies are incredibly accurate, like Apollo 13. This movie is way on the Apollo 13 side, including Have That Dry Cleaned.
Oh, wow.
Have That Dry Cleaned really happened. It's in the book. It is so clearly someone has a record of it. It's such an odd moment. It's an odd moment, and it's also an odd moment to steal from history, but it feels completely real.
And it's a great character beat for both of them. The fact that he throws his jacket at what's his name, Dixon or whatever his name is? Nichols. And Nichols receives it in a way that like you can tell that he's perturbed, that he's dismissed in this way. And Dane DeHaan, who had a mini run after Chronicle, never quite found the success that it's nice to see him as a villain kind of an antagonist, I guess, in the movie. And it sets him up really well. that he's a guy who feels dismissed, and he has that small man syndrome. And that comes out in a number of spots when he's trying to big time Oppenheimer. So even these little moments can give you quite a window into these characters. You know?
We sung the praises of Matt Damon on Interstellar, where he is fantastic. I love him as General Groves. The whole attitude he walks in, you know exactly who this guy is right from the beginning.
Yeah, I have to say, it took me two or three watches to finally like him in this role. The first time I watched the movie, I thought he was slightly miscast. I might have said that in my out of theater reaction when I did this for Oppenheimer. But he's like Sharon Stone in Casino. I had to grow into the appreciation of him in the role, and now I can't see anybody else doing it quite as well as he does.
It's so funny because I had the opposite reaction. The moment he starts talking, I'm like, oh, I get it. I like this. He says,
well, if that's how you treat Lieutenant Colonel, I'd hate to see how you treat a humble physicist.
Oh, if I ever meet one, I'll let you know.
This whole scene is great, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And part of it, what we talked about this enter late, leave early thing, which we've been doing throughout. And here, we're going to watch the whole scene. We're going to leave early, actually. We do still do that. But we're going to actually, after all this cutting back and forth between all these different timelines and all these things going on, we're going to sit here for a minute and let these two guys talk. And we hear that, that he's an engineer, that he's built the Pentagon, and that he's been put in charge of what they're calling the Manhattan Engineer District.
Which is?
Be a smartass. Know damn well what it is. You and half of every physics department across the country. That's problem number one.
I thought problem number one would be securing enough uranium ore.
1,200 tons. Bought the day I took charge.
And this is what we're going to hear from General Groves, is he is on it. He is organized, hardworking, clear thinking, no bullshit kind of guy.
Now I'm looking for a project director.
And my name came up.
Nope. Even though you brought quantum physics to America, which made me curious.
What if you found out?
And then he lays it out.
You're a dilettante, a womanizer, a suspected communist.
I'm a New Deal Democrat.
I said suspected. Unstable, theatrical, egotistical, neurotic.
I mean, not no.
This is amazing to have one of your characters come in and immediately undress your main protagonist verbally about all of the flaws that he has. By the way, we have seen only shades of this in the movie. Nolan is smart. Nolan didn't create a film that makes us not like this guy, because in another person's hands who wanted to make Oppenheimer a villain, you could have easily used these things to make him look like a terrible person. But they give you just enough to challenge you a little bit as a viewer, and then having Damon come in and lay this all down. It's almost like he's saying it like he's cool. It's almost in a way of making it a little more palatable and acceptable, because Cillian Murphy's performance, he's like, yeah, what else? It isn't quite like, oh my God, I feel terrible about myself, and so it's an interesting exchange between these guys here.
I honestly think that Oppenheimer respects Groves' honesty and laying into him. And I also think that he doesn't find anything in there that he disagrees with.
Yeah. Right.
He's like, it's probably true.
Your formula is right.
Nothing good? No, not even he's brilliant, but...
Well, brilliance is taken for granted in your circle, so no.
I think that's a really interesting statement, is that he's had to go around. Imagine if your job was to interview a whole slew of people who are technically smarter than you to do a job you don't know how to do. That's hard,
Yeah. And that's why this is, for us, is so interesting until later on when Oppenheimer says, bitch, you studied at MIT.
Yeah.
You know what the hell you were doing. So every once in a while, the government does get it right and finds the right person to be in charge of projects. And certainly Groves was the right man for this job. And he's playing Oppenheimer a little.
Oh, yeah.
This is his way of sussing out the situation as well. Intelligent, smart men in positions of power understand how to play with you to find out if you're really a person that they want to work with.
Now, the only person who had anything good to say was Richard Tolman. Tolman thinks you have integrity, but he also strikes me as a guy who knows more about science than people.
This is the guy whose wife Oppenheimer is sleeping with. That's the one guy that said, you have integrity.
Yet here you are. You don't take much on trust.
I don't take anything on trust.
I really do love Groves. I just love him.
Why don't you have a Nobel Prize?
Why aren't you a general?
They're making me one for this.
Perhaps I'll have the same luck.
Nobel Prize for making a bomb?
Alfred Nobel invented dynamite.
Which is true, and I don't know how many people know that the Nobel Prize is really about guilt. That this guy invented something is true. Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, then which he thought would be used for mining and agriculture, and suddenly people figured out, oh, you could use these same kind of ideas to make weapons. Right. And he was rich and felt really bad and established the Nobel Peace Prize and the prizes for science.
Oh, wow.
Then Groves asked the key question.
So how would you proceed?
When he says that, this is the when you watch Cillian Murphy in The Gray Board giving his testimony, like I said, it's like zero charisma. When Groves says, how would you proceed? You see the light come on in his eyes. And we're drawn to him just like everybody else is. It's amazing what happens.
You're talking about turning theory into a practical weapon system faster than the Nazis.
Who have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
And he knows that because he knows the Germans.
Who do you think they put in charge?
Werner Heisenberg. He has the most intuitive understanding of atomic structure I've ever seen.
You know his work.
I know him.
And this is this technique that we're not going to mention constantly, but we cut to him shaking hands with Heisenberg.
Just like I know Walter Botha, von Weizsäcker, Diebner, in a straight race, the Germans win. We've got one hope.
Which is?
And then he says something totally surprising.
Anti-Semitism.
It might be, for me, the most surprising line in the movie. I was totally shocked by that line.
And yet it makes total sense. And I wonder how much of Groves' reaction is legitimate when Oppenheimer says that. Because I feel like he might have thought that already. And I think this is what clinches Groves to sign Oppenheimer to be in charge of the program. Because Oppenheimer sees the advantage that Groves might have seen himself. Again, don't get it twisted. This is not a stupid man. And so he might have seen, knowing Hitler and having the intelligence, the military intelligence he has access to, he knows that Hitler is an utter anti-Semite. And so will this be something that helps them? Because he's rejecting Jewish scientists. And as Oppenheimer's just going to say right now, rejects Jewish science. So I think that's what cinches the deal for Oppenheimer to lead this program, this exchange in this conversation with Groves.
You know what's funny is that you and I have opposite interpretations of the moment and come to exactly the same conclusion. The conclusion that both of us come to is that this is the moment where he really starts to think that Oppenheimer might be his guy.
Yeah.
But my note for after he says anti-Semitism is this is the first time that Groves is actually surprised. So our interpretations are opposite, but the point is the same. This is the moment. And basically what he says is that because Hitler associates quantum physics as Jewish science, he is not going to give them the support that he would if they were not Jewish. And then we get to our problems.
Our nation's best scientists working together right now, they're scattered.
Which gives us compartmentalization.
And this is the key thing for Groves. This is setting up security. This is one of the major tensions. The most important thing is that we keep this science secure. Oppenheimer says something else.
All minds have to see the whole task to contribute efficiently. Poor security may cost us the race. Inefficiency will. The Germans know more than us anyway.
The Russians don't.
This is the movie, you know?
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Is that we have the enemy in front of us and the enemy in the future.
And I think, and I'm just coming to this idea now, Steve, that this is maybe why I love this movie so much. Because from this point forward, it's a sports movie. They are behind. They have found the right quarterback, the coach has, and he's got to put the team together. And the coach is to listen to what the quarterback wants to do and how he wants to assemble the team and how they're going to be successful and what advantages they're going to have, what plays they're going to call in order to catch up. And the coach is like, but we've also got to play the Russians later in the Super Bowl. I'm going to get us through the championship game. And I'm going to get us to the Super Bowl. And we're going to see what happens with the Super Bowl. And so in a way, in my mind, this becomes a sports movie because it's also a race against time, like a clock in a sports game, and where it all leads to. And it is a bomb, which is what's called when you throw the ball down the field is a bomb. So, I mean, so in a way, it kind of works for me in that way. So
It's so funny that you said that because here's what Christopher Nolan said about this movie.
Shut up. Wait, what did he say?
Well, he didn't say exactly what you said, but it's in the same ballpark. What he said, one of the things he said was that one of the things that made him so excited about making Oppenheimer was he was really able to do 3 genres of the film. One is, to some degree, it's a horror film, which is we're about this terrible thing. And there are moments, I don't think it's scary in like a jump scare sense, but it is scary in a like, this is like really heavy, you know, what's going on. It's chilling. Chilling is the right word.
Yeah.
The second thing is this is a trial movie because you're going to have trials and witnesses are called and moments of revelation and facts being brought out. And the third kind of movie, he said, wasn't a sports movie. He said a caper movie, which really is almost exactly the thing that you're talking about, is that we're putting the team together and each team member has to do a certain thing to get to a certain date to pull off the big caper. It's very much like a sports movie.
Yeah. True.
And after Oppenheimer, you know, kind of dismisses the Russians as a problem.
Somebody with your past doesn't want to be seen downplaying the importance of security from our communist allies.
Point taken, but no.
And what I love is the point taken is very much what happened with Lawrence is once he heard the thing, he agreed with it. But now he adds, but no.
You don't get to say no to me.
It's my job to say no to you when you're wrong.
So you have the job now?
I'm considering it.
Which is what he will later say to Strauss about the Princeton Institute when he already had the job. Like, well, this is, I'm sure you've heard this advice many times. You walk into the audition like you already booked the gig. Yeah. That's what Oppenheimer is doing here. And I think Groves' reaction to this bit of arrogance is great, which is he likes it.
Yep. Because you're going to need that kind of person to run this thing.
Yep. And Groves is arrogant.
Yes.
You know, like.
Exactly.
Well, and for both of them, they might be arrogant, but both of them, it is arrogant built on competence.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just someone walking in who doesn't know anything. These are the people that know the most.
I'm starting to see where you got your reputation. My favorite response, Oppenheimer couldn't run a hamburger stand.
Which was really said about Oppenheimer. And he smiles at this and says,
I couldn't, but I can run the Manhattan Project. There's a way to balance these things.
And then if the charisma wasn't big when he first started talking, now it like explodes off him as he goes to the board to lay out his plan. And basically what it is dividing you up into groups with Berkeley in charge of the lab here at Lawrence, different people in charge in Chicago, the guys who are processing the uranium and the plutonium.
All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected by rail, focused on one goal, one point in space and time. And it comes together here.
He draws a circle on that board and put an X in it, and he doesn't say it yet, but we all know that is Los Alamos.
Which makes me think he'd already been considering this, right? I mean, Kitty said to him, you're the one that's got to lead. You're the one that's got to do this. So when Groves showed up, and we don't know how Groves, got this whole meeting squared away or what happened or where he's been. And I imagine because the science community talks, I imagine he was hearing about all this stuff. And so he had his plan already ready to go before Groves walked through the door and got to that point where he's explaining his thought process. Because I don't think he comes up with that on the fly. I think he knows exactly how he wants this thing to run.
Oh, yeah. He worked on the pitch, to use the Hollywood term.
Yes, 100%.
Well, he's just been thinking through the problem probably for a year. And when he, now he's like ready to go. And again, this is the cutting style is as we hear the words, a secret library in the middle of nowhere, secure, self-sufficient, we are seeing them lay out the barbed wire that will border Los Alamos.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we're going to continue to answer questions in the cut because Grove says, where? And now we go to Los Alamos.
Welcome to Los Alamos. If there's a boys' school, we'll have to commandeer, and the local Indians come up here for burial rights, but apart from that, nothing. 40 miles, any direction. I'll have to find the perfect spot. For success.
And Groves takes a moment, processes it for seconds, 1 or 2 seconds, and then says,
build them a town. Fast.
I love the score here, man. The music cue when things are going is pulsating, man.
Yeah.
It's so good. And again, what is this? This is like, here's the field. Here's where we're going to practice. Here's where we're going to come up with the big play. And so in a lot of ways, again, the sports movie analogy. But the caper thing, of course, works so well too. But yeah, I love all of this. Now we're in it and we're involved in it. Like we're now in it as the audience. Like, okay, is he going to do it? How's he going to put it together? What's going to happen with all this kind of stuff? And the music helps us get to that place emotionally,
And it's seductive
yes,
because
very much
like
so.
let's say you were the most anti-nuclear, peace-loving granola person in the world. You think that Oppenheimer is a horrible, evil person. When they start building that town, you're excited.
Yep.
And this is the corruptive element of the film, is that we want Oppenheimer to succeed.
Yeah.
We might not want there to be a nuclear bomb, but we want him to succeed
Yeah.
in building it because we're in the sports movie,
Yeah. 100%.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
Why would I leave my family?
I told you, you can bring your family.
I'm not a soldier, Robbie.
A soldier? He's a general. I've got all the soldier I need.
So this is the montage,
Right.
This is
sports montage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally, and also one of my favorite montages that I will make fun of and still adore is Armageddon, to go round up all the guys that's the silliest thing in the world. They somehow spread all over the world in 36 hours. We have to round them all up, but it's great. And that's what we're doing. But the thing that Nolan is doing, because he's operating at such a high level, is we're getting all of this exposition. We're meeting a ton of characters most of whose names I'm not going to be able to mention all of them.
Right.
Going back and forth in time. And what's so beautiful about the editing is that it feels like one continuous conversation, even though we're going from scientist to location, to back to Groves and Oppenheimer on the train discussing things, back to more scientists, moving through all the arguments they need to make in order to recruit the people they want to recruit.
Yeah. And I think the arguments are great for the people who are resisting and for their pitch, right? For us as the audience. We now get a more well-rounded approach to this. Yes, we're seduced, as you said so well, Steve. We're caught up in this, as I was saying. But also, we're getting in, for those of us who are picking this up in the back of our minds, we're hearing the descent that is going to be a part of this and accompany the creation of the bomb and then lead to Oppenheimer dealing with the consequences of what he did. Because from the beginning, the scientific community is telling them their reservations before even boarding the project. And then while they're doing the project, there are a number of instances where they're having conversations about what's our responsibility to having created this thing. So I think it's important to lay the groundwork here, along with being caught up that there are conflicts coming, intellectual conflicts and philosophical challenges coming.
Then back in the train, he asks Groves, "What can I tell these scientists?"
Yeah.
And now we're with some other scientists, including Jack Quaid, who's playing Richard Feynman. And this is like a nerd Easter egg. It's not seeing some character in a Marvel movie. It's like, oh, that guy's really this villain that didn't, that's going to come along later. Richard Feynman is one of the great nerd, the people who dig science. They read his book. Like the most famous one is Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And he is a character. He has all sorts of stories about Los Alamos and the world there, and we were basically going to get none of them in this movie other than that he has the bongos, which is definitely something he played all through Los Alamos.
Yeah. I can I say a quick story?
Yeah.
When I used to manage bookstores, we sold out of Feynman's book all the time.
Yeah.
That Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And I had no idea who this was.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the 100th book that I finally was like, who is this? And they explained who he was. And I was like, this is amazing. So yeah.
If you ever read it, he's really fun. He's a very funny, interesting, smart person.
Yeah.
And that book is really interesting. But the other thing is that we had this moment on the train where he said, "What can I tell them?" And now we're going to see how that plays out.
Heisenberg, Wiebner, both are Bohr. What do these men have in common?
The greatest minds on atomic theory.
Yes, and?
Because he's trying to hint with them, like, we're going to build a bomb, but he can't tell them that.
You know isotopes, and you know explosives better than anyone in the world.
But you can't tell us what you're doing.
And I'm going like, dudes, he's dropping some hints.
Why would we go to the middle of nowhere for who knows how long?
For a year or 2 or 3.
And then Oppie turns to Groves and says, "Can you give me a minute?" And he walks away with these two guys, and very, very softly, he says,
"It's about unleashing a strong force before the Nazis do."
Oh my God.
So it means that scene earlier when the Nazis split the atom and he said every physicist in the world is thinking about a bomb.
Yeah.
These guys weren't, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, excellent point.
Why would you think I'd do that?
And I love General Groves, who just with soldier-like intensity goes,
Why? Why? How about because this is the most important fucking thing to ever happen in the history of the world? How about that?
and Groves storms off and Robert gives him a little nod. Just like, yeah, that's what we're talking about, bitch. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think it's amazing. And the way they build to it is so great because Groves has been sitting in these meetings.
Yes.
He's just like, fuckers, do you understand what we're doing here?
The next objection we come to is someone with a background like Oppenheimer's.
So you're a fellow traveler. So what? This is a national emergency. I've got some skeletons. They put me in charge. They need us.
Until they don't.
You mentioned the score there. The score here, that dissonant cue that comes in is fantastic.
Again, this whole sequence foreshadows what's coming in the second half of the movie. And him saying that, they need us until they don't. We've already had the preview of the security clearance meeting, and we already see that they've tried to stack the deck against him with that Robbie Robb character. And so this is what this guy is saying. And I don't think it's an accident that they light him in a darker room where he's, where it feels claustrophobic, it feels menacing. And it's all to put it in the back of our mind subconsciously that what he's talking about is going to happen. And it's also highlighting how our country and other countries have used certain people to achieve the overall goal of the country and then toss them aside. How many black soldiers were used to defend this country in the Civil War and other fights, and they were tossed aside after their needs or their rights were tossed aside? How many times has that happened? How many times have we used Jewish people in our country, but still there's such an anti-Semitic strain within the fabric of our society? It's those kinds of things, and I love that he throws this in there. This is a gutsy decision by a filmmaker like this that could be seen by someone with less talent as banging you over the head with this philosophy. But the way he slides it in here, I think is so perfect to add that little bit of menace amidst this excitement of bringing all these scientists together.
It goes back to these things I was saying about how Oppenheimer was raised. And he was raised to believe that the solution to anti-Semitism was essentially to be hardworking, knowledgeable, perfect, brilliant, and contribute to society. And once we do that, they will see us not as enemies, but as friends and be loyal to us. And this line is saying, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not going to work. And at least in Oppenheimer's experience, now I think Oppenheimer, he dug his own grave in many ways, through the course of this film. But the idea in his head is, I'm doing a service to my country. So of course they will honor that and reward that. And that until they won't,
Yeah. His idealism. And I don't think it's an accident that they let this guy say, I'm a fellow traveler.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is essentially referencing Russian sympathies.
Yeah.
And I've heard the term, I think the term has also been used at times in the gay community. And I don't know if it's being used in the Jewish community, but the term essentially implies someone who is hiding just like you are and worried that people might find out and destroy me,
I mean, my sense of that word has always been that it's a fellow traveler is someone who is united on a certain unpopular political belief system.
There you go. Yeah. Good point.
Like we're traveling together in a certain way, thinking some of the same thoughts. Back at Los Alamos, Robert Oppenheimer is now in uniform. Looks like a military guy.
Yeah.
By the way, he did have to enlist in the army in order to get that uniform, but they at first denied him because he was 4F for being too skinny. Now, Robert Oppenheimer was 5'7". Do you want to take a guess on how much he weighed when he tried to enlist in the military?
Well, too skinny, 95 pounds?
Oh, okay. Well, no, he's not that skinny. He was 128 pounds.
Oh,
when he tried to enroll, that's still too skinny. By the time he finished at Los Alamos, he was 115 pounds.
Of course.
Yeah.
from the stress of it all. Why not?
How's it, guys? They say the building's too small for this cyclotron.
Get them together with the architects.
When's this place supposed to open?
2 months.
And you could see building everywhere. Well, they really built this Los Alamos for the film. They actually thought, because Los Alamos is still there, and they thought about shooting at the actual Los Alamos, but it's been modernized in so many ways that they'd have to like figure out how to shoot around the Starbucks that is there.
Right.
And so they said, okay, we're just going to build the whole thing from scratch. They laid out one of the things they did is they laid out all the streets so that the vista at the end of the street was at some mountain or mesa. So they're thinking about the cinematography in the way that they're laying out the town. They built many buildings that were forced perspective or foreshortened, which means that they're not built to scale. They're bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top to give the sense that the buildings are bigger than they actually are. A lot of the buildings they actually built with interiors, some of which they shot in, but some of which were storage and the offices for the crew while they were shooting at the Los Alamos set.
Okay.
It took 3 months to build this town. They only shot there for 6 days.
Oh, man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's crazy to me in two ways. One is just 3 months to have a crew out there building a town. Like that's that's old school Hollywood filmmaking right there.
Yeah.
The efficiency of shooting everything at Los Alamos in 6 days is insane.
Yeah, because so much of the next few, I don't know, hour of the movie is in Los Alamos.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It's amazing. I don't think like the actual Trinity test, I don't think that's counted in those 6 days. That had to take longer and it was probably somewhere else. But still, there's a lot of walking down the streets and talking to people with a lot of extras in the background and all. By the way, about the extras, a lot of the extras they had when they were actually shooting in and around Los Alamos were scientists who were working at Los Alamos because it's still a working lab. And what Christopher Nolan said, he said it was the best extras he's ever had in his life. Because when he had, they're doing background conversation and he said, okay, everyone's talking about this. All the background conversation was all the scientific terms and everything. Or when he would say like, this has just happened or this just happened. They're like, oh, we know exactly what that is because they're literally, this is their specialty, which I think is hilarious. Robbie is there. Always the conscience and the heart, I think, of this film in a lot of ways.
Robert, you're the great improviser, but this you can't do in your head.
And Oppenheimer lays out on a chalkboard the organizational breakdown.
Experimental, theoretical, metallurgical.
Who's running theoretical?
I am.
That's what I was afraid of. You spread too thin.
And then rather than arguing with him, Robert just immediately pivots. This is a sign of a great leader. He hears you're spread too thin. I think he knows instantly that that's true. And he says,
So you take theoretical.
I'm not coming here, Robert.
And there's a huge reaction. It's a shocking moment.
Why not?
You drop a bomb and it falls on the just and the unjust.
Which, that's biblical, the way that he's framing this now.
I don't wish the culmination of 3 centuries of physics to be a weapon of mass destruction.
And I think the film pauses here a little bit. Not just to let Oppenheimer take that in, but to let us take that in.
100%.
Is he? I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon. But I know the Nazis can't.
And we cut to Robbie, and he's crying.
I want to say something. I'll see if I can walk into the minefield correctly. But for whatever reason, since I was a young man, I've watched films that have Jewish characters discussing really important things, important moments. And for whatever reason, I've always gravitated to that because there is an element of thinking of the past, present, and future at the same time. And the religious aspect of Judaism always becomes something that is tied intrinsically into the conversation, the tenets of Judaism. And Robbie is such an important voice in the movie, as you said so well just a couple of minutes ago, Steve. I love David Krumholtz in this role. I think he should have been nominated or won for Best Supporting Actor. I think every time he comes in, he brings a soulfulness, a reality that makes us aware, no matter how much we're getting excited about him doing this, Oppenheimer, there is a reality to what he's doing that he's going to have to confront at some point. And Robbie is the one who really is able to drive that point home, where all the other scientists, until we get to Safdie, really don't really quite nail that as strongly. It's Robbie who gets these moments to say this to him, like, you're not dropping the bomb on just the just, it's the unjust as well. And that is the thing we have to reckon with, and we will reckon with later when they make the bomb and Oppenheimer tries to convince everyone, well, it's not our responsibility once we give them the weapon. And I think it's important to have Robbie do it because he's the more soulful of all the characters in the movie. And I think it's an incredible performance.
It's interesting that you say that about Jewish conversations about serious things, and how, because I think, I don't know how much we've ever discussed this, but like, I'm sort of fascinated. There are a lot of different models for what a teacher is.
Yeah.
There's the maestro, there's the sensei, there's the hard ass, football coach.
Yeah.
The rabbinical model is similar in a way to the Socratic method, which is that the rabbi doesn't, like sensei says, you do this.
Yeah.
The football coach says, you go do that. Because they are the expert. And the rabbi says, what do you think of this? What does this mean?
Yeah.
And it invites a discussion. And all of, the Talmud and all of these, there's, like you remember the Martin Landau character in Rounders.
Yeah.
Who talks about, is that the idea, he's like, I had a real sense of the midrash, which is, it's like the sense of what could the meaning of all of these things be? That is a very Jewish thing to wrestle with morality, or at least in my version of what it means to be Jewish. Obviously, you've listened to me wrestle with morality for 10 years on the podcast. Like, that's how I think. And that's what Robbie's doing,
Yes. And I've always had Jewish people in my life who, like, I've had the most interesting conversations about viewpoints on the world and consequences and ramifications. And should you do this or should you do that? Or what's the right path? I always find it to be fascinating. And I always come away from those conversations with a much more nuanced point of view on these things. And I think it's again, I'll reiterate this, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I think it's such an essential part of this movie to have Robbie in it. And him convincing him, because Robbie is dead set against it.
Yeah.
And it's him saying, listen, it's the Nazis or us. You have to understand that. And I think Robbie's tears are from the place of the fact that humanity has come to this. I think he has a real love of humanity, and it breaks his heart that humanity would come to a place where they would create something like this to destroy other human beings, the just and the unjust,
I honestly, and I have no evidence of this at all, I think that Robbie probably knew that Oppenheimer was going to convince him to do it before, but still felt he had to say what he had to say. And and hope that he wouldn't get convinced.
Yeah.
Hope that he could get out of there. Yeah. But as you say, the minute that he kind of says we have no choice, Robbie is signed on.
The second thing you have to do is appoint Hans Bethe to run the theoretical division.
I love that he starts with the second thing. That's just good writing. And he says, wait, what was the first?
Take off that ridiculous uniform. You're a scientist.
Groves is insisting we join.
Tell Groves to go shit in his hat. They need us for who we are. So be yourself. Only better.
Boy, that's a great moment.
Yep.
Be yourself, only better. That is...
He's trying to remind him who he is before he gets lost in the arrogance of what he's doing, because he knows that Oppenheimer is a guy who has constantly needed the reassurance that he is the most intelligent person in the room. We saw that previewed from the beginning of the movie, his mental health struggles. So Robbie is trying to say, don't lose yourself in this process, because you're going to be seen as one of the greatest people who ever walked the earth and created something like this. Don't lose yourself.
The first time I ever encountered the quote that's come up multiple times in this movie, that God doesn't play dice with the universe, was in Watchmen, where Alan Moore put it at the end of one of the issues. One of the other quotes, and I've mentioned it many times on the Cine-Files, that I continually think about, that I discovered in Watchmen, is a Bob Dylan quote, which is, in order to live outside the law, you must be honest. I think about this all the time, and I have my own meaning for it, which isn't necessarily what Bob meant. But for me, that means, like, if I'm going to step outside the rules of society, then I take on all the responsibility for my actions. There's no longer police. There's no longer government. There's no longer anyone to make sure that I'm being moral except for me. This line of be yourself, only better, to me is writing those lines. It's like, okay, you just said that you know the Nazis cannot be trusted and you don't know if we can be trusted. Right. Well, you're the person in charge. So if anybody's going to be trustworthy, it's got to be you.
Yeah.
So be yourself, only better.
Yeah. Great point.
And then we have, and I'm going to guess that you had this exact thought because I've known you a long time. We look down at the pork pie hat and the pipe, and he's putting on his uniform, and I immediately think of the film Chaplin.
I also immediately think of the outlaw putting his cowboy hat on for the first time and the mask and going, this is the look. But yes, absolutely. 100% the Charlie Chaplin moment. But it's also this thing of like, he creates a character. He is now deciding who he is. I am the destroyer of worlds. And so he essentially is assuming the uniform of this, the mantle of this, to separate himself out from everyone else.
This Robert Oppenheimer did consciously create this look. He didn't want to look like he cared what people think or about appearances, but he definitely cared what people think and about presenting this appearance. He absolutely did. And not only that, but the film production, I won't say that they took this quite as seriously as like Deadpool's uniform in Deadpool, like a superhero uniform, they spent a lot of time and looked at a lot of hats and a lot of pipes and a lot of suits to get it just right. Christopher Nolan was literally cutting individual hairs on Cillian Murphy's head in order to get the haircut just right. Cillian described it as the worst haircut he's ever had, but it looked right for the part. And now we have that great, it is a full like superhero moment of him in that outfit with the badge that says K6 on his lapel, walking through the town of Los Alamos. And their whole idea, there was no question that they were thinking there's a new sheriff in town. That's what this shot is.
100%. Yep. Very much a Western shot. Yep.
We're back at Berkeley. We're in the lab. We're waiting on some guy named Teller. And then and then Teller walks in, and that is Benny Safdie. And I'm just going to say, he is so peculiarly fascinating in this role.
Yeah.
It's great.
So good here, man. So good.
Apparently, Christopher Nolan called up Paul Thomas Anderson to ask how he was to work with on Licorice Pizza, because he's in that. And PTA gave him the thumbs up, and that's how he got cast in the film.
It's a better film he was in than Licorice Pizza. God, I hate that movie.
So they're starting to talk about some business, about building bombs as you do, but Teller has something else he wants to talk about.
When I calculated the chain reaction, I found a rather troubling possibility.
And he passes this note around, and all the scientists are looking at it, and they're all going, this can't be right.
Teller's calculations can't be right.
Do them yourself while I go to Princeton.
What for?
To talk to Einstein.
Well, there's not much common ground between you two.
That's where I should get his view.
By the way, I said a few minutes ago that this movie is incredibly historically accurate.
Yeah.
This is not. He did not go to Einstein to talk about this. He went to talk to another scientist, probably because of what Einstein later says, which is that he doesn't have the math to check this. And so we're back at Princeton, where Albert is once again walking along by this pond, but now he's with this other guy who's Gödel. And when Oppenheimer asks to talk to Albert alone, he explains,
Some days, God refuses to eat. Even in Princeton, he's convinced that the Nazis can poison his food.
And by the way, I don't know if people recognize him, but this is Tom Conti, who is a phenomenal actor who's been acting for numerous decades, playing Albert Einstein. He's a British actor, but he's done a lot of American things over the years. I don't know if you remember, Steve, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. That's like way back in the 1980s. Wow. Yeah, he was a part of that film as well. And throughout the years, he's popped up in some interesting places. Shirley Valentine, people remember that from 1989. That was a bit of a British hit when it came out as well. But he's always popped up in these interesting films and TV shows and done really good work. And I think he is the perfect choice to play Einstein. He conveys that kind of like warmth, but also kind of playful aloofness about his intelligence. And then when he has these back and forths with Oppie about the formula, the script here is so well written, and their back and forth to understand what positions they're in is so well laid out for us as the audience. It's just brilliant stuff here, man.
Honestly, I think his casting and the makeup and everything they do with him is so good that I most of the time just think that's Einstein.
Yes,
I really do. It just feels like that's not an actor. That's just Albert Einstein.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Walter Matthau in IQ was a good Einstein as well, but this is really
It's a whole different thing. It's an entirely different kind of movie. I did see that movie. I have very little memory of it, but I definitely watched it.
I love that movie. It's such a cute movie.
So Oppenheimer hands him this note.
Whose work is this?
Tellers.
What do you take it to mean?
And again, in one of these moments, as he asked that question, we see chain reactions. We see Nolan is literally making visual the thought that Albert Einstein is having as he reads these equations.
Neutrons smash into nucleus, releasing neutrons to smash into other nuclei. Criticality, a point of no return, massive explosive force. But this time, the chain reaction doesn't stop.
It would ignite the atmosphere.
And then Robert turns to the pond as it essentially bursts into flame. It's Nolan. It's like he's doing a thing that filmmakers rarely do, which is he's showing the internal life and the thoughts. Everything we think you can't do in film. This is show, don't tell. It's like, no, we're literally seeing Oppenheimer and Einstein's thoughts.
When we detonate an atomic device, we might start a chain reaction that destroys the world.
So here we are, lost in your quantum world of probabilities and needing certainty.
And I think there's a little bit of, I don't know, it's not Schadenfreude exactly, but there's sort of a, like, you wanted to go down this path, you know? I didn't like it.
It's about calling him out a little bit. Like, hey, I told you this. Because I imagine Oppenheimer probably ridiculed him a little bit for this. And he'd probably heard, like, the younger scientists, or because like what he says to Strauss, right? In his time, he was important in his time, right?
Well, I mean, and this is true, is like in almost every field, there's, you know, people, we did a short recently about how people are feeling about the older directors and whether or not they need to make room for the younger directors. Is
right.
Yeah, Einstein had a hit, 30 years ago, but what's he done for me lately?
Right.
Can you run the calculations yourself?
About the only thing you and I have in common is a disdain for mathematics.
Which is basically why he didn't actually come to ask Albert Einstein about this thing at the time.
Who's working on this in Berkeley?
Hans Bethe.
You'll get to the truth.
And if the truth is catastrophic?
Then you stop and you share your findings with the Nazis. So neither side destroys the world.
Yeah, I think this is a critical moment in the movie for me personally. Because I do think there are evil people in the world. And I think Einstein's being a little naive, that he thinks that the Nazis are still foundationally human in a way. And I think it would be such a danger to tell them that the thing they're creating could give them possibly ultimate power over the world. And to give someone this
to destroy
evil,
the world.
To destroy the world, yes. But I believe they would rather destroy the world than live in a world where they're not in power.
To me, if you knew that someone, even somebody evil, was rushing towards a thing that had a chance of destroying the entire planet, I'm with Einstein. You have to inform them. I don't think you need to inform them of any information you have about the bomb that you're building, but saying, hey, here's this, we think this could happen. Because the world is at stake. The entire, every human life on Earth. And while I think that the Nazis and Adolf Hitler get as damn close to pure evil as you can get, that doesn't mean I don't think every single Nazi would be happy to watch the world burn, including their own death and the death of their family. I don't think that's true at all. I think Hitler wanted to survive.
Hitler killed himself when he knew it wasn't
after he had lost the war.
Right. And what's his face killed his kids, right? They all took the poison. I forget who.
After they had lost the war, but they didn't want to kill themselves. They didn't enter into World War II.
But I'm saying they would rather kill themselves than live in a world that wasn't run by them. That's my point. And I think that's truly evil, that they would sacrifice their own family or themselves because they couldn't handle the loss and live in a world that wasn't run by them. That to me is evil, that you can't take that loss and accept it and just try to function in the world.
Sure.
And so that's why I think him telling the Nazis, that would have made them work even harder to create this bomb to come out on top. Maybe they'd have put down the idea of working, maybe they'd have let go of the idea of not working with Jewish scientists and would have brought them in and sped this process along so that they could have the power of it to lord it over the world, which is why I think it would have been a massive mistake to tell the Nazis about this and the end result of it. Because I think they would use it for evil, whereas I think in the end, though, you could argue, of course, that we used it in a lot of Japanese people's minds and a lot of other people's minds for evil when we dropped it on those two, on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So,
I mean, this is why this is a great film.
Yes, agreed. Yes.
Because there isn't an answer here. There is. I mean, this is what one of the things that frustrates me so much about our political world today is there frequently is the belief that if you would only let me take charge, I could solve all of this. This is easy to solve. The problem is the other people are idiots and they're terrible. Instead of like, no, most of the really serious issues that we face, immigration, poverty, the Middle East, China, AI, all of these things are hard. They're really complicated. And making a decision in one direction automatically frequently means hurting something else in another direction.
I agree. But when someone is showing you who they are, we need to pay attention.
I agree with that too.
I mean, like these top Nazi people like Hitler and Himmler and all those guys, I think they would be even more motivated to create this bomb so they could control the world completely by using the threat of this bomb and hanging it over people, hanging it over countries the whole time.
I see. I think that's a great point because that's not how I was thinking about it. What I didn't go to the thought that you just had, which is essentially, the terrorist do what I want or I'm going to destroy the world. I hadn't taken it to that place. I had merely taken it to they're running their experiments and they're going to have their own Trinity test, not knowing this, and then they accidentally destroy the world because they don't know this thing.
Well, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
No, that's the whole point to me is like they don't know they have the potential to kill every human on Earth while they're trying to build this bomb. We need to tell them that, you know.
And I'm saying don't tell them that because that'll motivate them to create it quicker. Yeah.
Well, again, I'll say it again. This is why this is a great movie, and this is why there aren't answers to these. There are no right answers. There are answers. You're going to make choices, and those choices are going to have consequences, both good and bad.
I agree with you, brother. It's what makes the movie so great. It challenges us as the viewers. Where do we land on all of this?
Exactly.
Great.
And Oppenheimer takes that in and starts to walk away. And then Albert Einstein says,
Albert,
and holds out the paper with the calculations and says,
this is yours, not mine.
Oh, great button on that scene, right? Because essentially he's saying, this is your responsibility. This is your thing. Not mine. Don't involve me in this. This is your time. This is your decade of science. This is what you're going to create. I did my thing. And I think it's so powerful.
I mean, you say you want to be in charge. You say you want to get the ball. You say you want to be the person in the moment who has to make that decision. Yeah. This is what that's like. So many people think that they can, Monday morning quarterbacking or whatever. And they go like, if I was there, I would do so much better. And it's like, no. Take that sheet of paper that says you might destroy the world and you decide what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a great point, Steve.
We go back to the labs and they've done some more calculations.
When you now tell us critical assumptions, the real picture emerges.
Bottom line.
The chances of an uncontrolled nuclear reaction are near zero.
Near zero.
Oh, this is good news.
Can you run them again?
No, you'll get the same answer. Until they actually detonate one of these things, the best assurance you're going to get is this. Near zero.
And then this line that we've heard many times before that is transformed over and over and over again.
The area will take you only so far.
And I want to point this out. Like, this is planting repeating, and transforming. This is classic storytelling technique. We're going to introduce a thing thinking it means one thing. And I actually think that they introduced this idea even before we hear that line for the first time, which is Robert Oppenheimer is bad at lab work.
Yeah.
That's not what he does. It's not the physical stuff. Then he wants to be near the lab because he wants to test out his theories in real world stuff, which is when we hear the line the first time. Then the lab in Germany does a thing that Robert's theories say is impossible.
Yeah.
Because theory will only take you so far. And now we get to this moment of it's the opposite projection. Like I said, at this point, we're doing math in order to figure out science rather than just observing the world. There's no way to observe an atomic blast until we blow up an atomic bomb. And so again, now this idea of theory will only take you so far has become even more powerful.
And Hans Butte, I think this character is so important throughout the movie because he's kind of this, in times driving force, at times antagonistic force, and it becomes an energy in this. He's almost like, I don't know, like an isotope in a way. It could like blow this one way or the other because of his calculations, because of his approach. And even here, the conversation with Oppenheimer telling him, well, it's near zero. This is good. This is a good thing, right? Because he wants to get this bomb created as well. And I haven't mentioned that the actor is Gustav Skarsgård. He's the other Skarsgård, for God's sakes. All these fucking Skarsgårds, man, they're all so talented. And I think he's really good here in what he does. As good as Safdie is in different ways with the scenes that he's in. And this is another one that I think, he's almost seducing Oppie and like, hey, this is a good thing that it's near zero, as if near zero couldn't still kill a bunch of people,
Well, near zero is better than 9 out of 10 chance we're going to destroy the world. It's an improvement. And at this moment that we have decided that it is possible that Oppenheimer's work at the Manhattan Project could actually destroy every life on the planet Earth, I think it's a good time to end part 2 of our deep dive into Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, we got into some heavy issues that we don't have good answers to. And maybe you have the answers to these things. You could visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for The Cine-Files, Cine_Files on Twitter, The Cine-Files Podcast on Instagram. If you haven't subscribed to the show, we'd love you to do so. You can do it at any podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can leave comments on YouTube and Spotify, reviews on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And of course, if you wanted to support the show, it's at patreon.com/thecine-files, where you can get ad-free episodes, ask questions, listen to our shorts. You can also get the ad-free episodes and shorts on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to reach me, it's at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how would people find you?
You can always find me at The Rocha Says on all social media. And if you want to head over to my YouTube channel, I'd love to have you all. YouTube.com/John Rocha Says. Thousands of you listen to our show. Would love for you all to come over and subscribe to my stuff as well and get me to that 50,000 subscriber mark. And also our YouTube channel that's there. Just look up The Cine-Files on YouTube, and our YouTube channel will be there for you all to subscribe to as well.
And I think that's it for this week. We will continue our exploration of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer next week on The Cine-Files.